Today we're going to keep working on this global studies video, and we're going to edit the audio a little bit. So a few things we need to do. Remember last time we had some rough transitions in the audio, some places that sounded kind of jagged or bumpy, and they were just a little bit distracting. So we're going to fix those spots. We're also going to add some music. So let's listen through and find some of those places that were a little bit bumpy.
I went on a trip to France and Toulouse last year during spring break.
I went on the Caring for Cambodia trip.
I went on the Iceland trip.
Quebec City.
The Bulgaria trip.
So immediately I noticed that these two transitions right here are pretty rough. Let's listen one more time.
Quebec City.
The Bulgaria.
You can hear that blip in the audio. So what I'm going to do is with my selection tool, V on the keyboard, I'm going to hover over this transition here, and I'm going to click on it. And you'll see it gets highlighted in red. I'm actually going to zoom in here too. And while you have this transition zone highlighted, what you can do is press Control-Shift-D, and that's going to add a constant power crossfade. Now what this constant power transition is going to do is it's going to take the first clip's volume and it's going to bring it from full volume down to 0 over the course of this transition. It's going to take the second clip and it's going to take it from no volume all the way up to full volume over the course of the transition. So let's hear what that sounds like.
Quebec City.
I went on the Bulgaria trip.
So you can hear that that's what's happening. The problem is we don't want the transition to last that long because we don't want to hear his voice all the way into halfway through in the second clip, and we don't want to hear her voice starting halfway through his clip. So what we're going to do is we're going to hover over with our V tool, with our selection tool, we're going to hover over the end of the transition and just bring it in. And usually somewhere between 2 and 4 frames is how long you want these to be. So you can see where it says duration. We've made it 10 frames shorter than it initially was, and now it says the duration is 4 frames. So let's see what that sounds like.
Quebec City.
On the Bulgaria trip.
I think even that is still a little bit too much, so let's go to 2 frames, 1 frame on each side of the clips, and that should take care of our problem.
Quebec City.
The Bulgaria.
So you can already tell that's much smoother than it was to begin with. So what I'm going to do now that I have this, I'm going to select it and then Control-C, and I'm going to hover over another transition zone and click on it, and then I'll press Control-V to paste that transition. And now we have another transition, and it should take care of our second audio blip as well.
The Bulgaria trip.
The Toulouse.
So that sounds much more seamless than it did before. So you're going to want to go through and do this for every transition zone that is a little bit bumpy. It's also important to add these at the end of sections where you have a gap in the audio, because this is going to go from having some volume here. It's at the end of the clip will just be kind of room noise where I recorded the interview, but then it's going to go to absolute silence here, and then again the room noise, and then the voice will start in this next clip. So let's hear what that sounds like.
Global studies trip.
So that's really bumpy. You can really tell that that doesn't sound good. So I'm going to add another transition here, hover on the end of this clip, Control-Shift-D, and now what it's going to do is it's just going to fade the volume from the beginning of this transition, from full volume to the end, it's going to go down to no volume. So I'm going to, these can be a little bit longer. I think I'll make this one about 8 frames long, and we'll see what that sounds like.
For global studies trip.
That seems to work pretty well. I think I'll Control-C to copy that, paste it here, and hear what this sounds like now.
Global studies trip.
I was interested in...
Now you can hear Tyler start to breathe in a little bit at the end of this clip, even though we have this constant power fade on there. I think what I want to do is just bring his entire audio in by a frame or 2. So I'm going to go -1 frame, see what that sounds like.
Trip. Global studies trip.
Maybe even 1 more frame. When you're trying to move 1 frame at a time, if you have snap turned on, this magnet here, it can be kind of tough. So it's helpful sometimes to turn that off when you're just trying to move a clip 1 frame.
Global studies trip.
So that sounds much better. Okay, so we're good there. I'm going to turn snap back on. To turn snap on, we could click on this magnet tool, or we could just press S. So another place where you want to add these transitions is at the beginning of your video and at the end. So Control-C to copy and then paste with Control-V. And again, we've already put one there. So I have a lot more transitions that I need to put in, but I'm not going to do that right now. But make sure you go through every clip and make sure that it sounds smooth. So now let's add some music. I have a song in mind for this video. It's royalty free. Bolus has already paid for the license and we can use it in as many projects as we want. This is where we'll get most of our music, and I'll show you where to find that in coming videos. But for now, I'm just going to pull in this Let's Shape the Future track into my project window, just like you would any other piece of footage. So a couple of ways that we can get this music into our sequence. We can either just drag it from our project window straight into our timeline, into audio track 2 underneath of our interview audio. Or we could open it in our source monitor where we can listen to the track, and we can also see the waveform monitor here that shows us when the music is getting louder, and it shows us, the tempo of it. And if we bring it up here, we could drag it down by clicking on this little waveform icon that says drag audio only when you hover over it, and pull it down into audio track 2. Now, this song is way too long for our video. It's 2 minutes and 40 seconds long, and our target length is about 2 minutes and 10 seconds long. So luckily, there's a really easy way to fix this. And what I'm going to do is right click on my audio clip and say edit in Adobe Audition. Adobe Audition is a dedicated audio editor in the Adobe Creative Suite, and what's great about it is that it works seamlessly with Premiere Pro. So if we make changes in Audition, we can send those changes right back to Premiere Pro, and it will recognize them. So the first thing that we need to do, it brought in our audio clip, it brought in our music clip, and you can see that up here with the waveform icon next to it. We need to go to File, New, Multi-Track Session, and I'm going to call this Let's Shape the Future 2 minutes 10 seconds, and then I'll click OK. And it brings up this window that has 6 audio tracks in it. We only need 1, and what we're going to do is pull over our music clip, and then we can use this scroll bar up here to make our view bigger or smaller. I'm just going to widen it out so we can see the entire clip. And then with my move tool, which is V on the keyboard, I'm going to select this clip. And then we have this window over here called Essential Sound, and we can assign a mix type. So we're going to assign a music mix type, and then we're going to unclick Unify Loudness because we don't want to change the volume of the clip. We just want to change the duration. So we're going to click that duration box, and then we're going to set our target duration to 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Now we don't want to use stretch because that could change the tempo of our song. We don't want to change that, we just want to change the length. So we're going to choose remix. And Audition is going to find places to cut the music and make it shorter, and it's going to sound seamless. And when it's done analyzing this, you'll see that there's jagged lines that show us where the cuts have been made, so we can go through and we can listen and make sure that all of those cuts actually do sound seamless before we send it back to Premiere. So let's give this a second, and there we go, there's our jagged lines. So what I like to do is just go a few seconds before that first jagged line and play forward. So that first cut was really seamless. I couldn't even tell that there was a cut there. The second one wasn't quite as good, but I think that because it's going to be background music, we're not going to notice it when we're watching and listening to the interviews. Let's check this last cut real quick. And that one's great too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say export and export to Premiere Pro. Now it's really important that we just have this open in Adobe Premiere Pro box checked, and then we can click export. And then we're going to get this dialog box that asks if we want to make this a new audio track. Let's say OK. And then we probably need to scroll down, and there's our new audio track, and you can see that it's shorter. It's at about 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So I'm going to delete this first one that we worked on, and I'm going to pull my new track up to audio track 2. Scroll back up here. So we have our interview audio in audio track 1 and our music in audio track 2. Now let's listen and hear what it sounds like.
I went on a trip to France and Toulouse last year during spring break.
I went on the Caring for Cambodia trip. I went on the Iceland trip.
Quebec City,
The Bulgaria trip.
Okay, it sounds pretty good, but it's a little bit loud, a little bit distracting. So what we need to do is change the volume of this music clip. I'm going to hit G on my keyboard to bring up my gain controls, and what I can do with this is lower the volume uniformly. So if I type in -12, it's going to adjust my gain by -12 decibels, and you can see that up here, this grayed out box that is our current level. So I'm going to click OK, and we'll hear what that sounds like.
I went on a trip to France and Toulouse last year during spring break.
I went on the Caring for
I think it's still a little bit too loud, so I'm going to hit G again. And now I have a couple of options. I could set gain to just click on that and say -13, or I could do adjust gain by -1, which will make it -13 because we started at -12, and then I'll click OK.
Cambodia trip. I went on the Iceland trip.
Quebec City,
the Bulgaria trip.
The Toulouse, France.
I think that sounds much better. So usually you're going to go somewhere between -10 and -20, and that's going to depend on how loud the music is, what instruments are being used, how loud your interview audio is. But in general, -10 to -20 decibels is going to be the range that you're in. Now, one last thing I want to show you, if we zoom in here, if any of these audio clips are too quiet in our interview audio, we can do the same thing. We can hit G on the keyboard, and it's going to tell us what our peak amplitude is. So this is the highest level that this clip reaches, which is -10.5 decibels. If we go to another clip here, like this one, I can tell it's louder because I'm looking at the waveform, and these waveform spikes go higher. I'm going to hit G on the keyboard, and I can see that the peak amplitude here is 0. Now, I could raise my gain here maybe by 4 decibels and just see what that sounds like.
The Toulouse, France trip.
Maybe even another 4. I just recorded this clip a little bit too quietly.
The Toulouse, France trip.
Now you want to be careful with gain, especially on interview audio, because you're not just raising the voice volume, you're also raising everything else, including the background noise, the ambient noise, all of that stuff that's going on. So I'm going to put this back at -4. So I'm going to adjust my gain from 8, adjust it by -4. That'll take it to 4. Click OK.
France trip.
Bulgaria.
Okay, I think that sounds okay. So that's all we're going to do for today. We're going to smooth out some of our audio transitions in our interview by adding constant power crossfades. And we're going to add some music to our projects, adjust the duration of it, adjust the volume of it, go back and make sure that our interview audio volume is good as well. So as always, thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.